just took a little jog down memory lane a little while back, earlier this week, and really thought of a story that might be as life-changing as the basketball story. Let me get this guy out of here, and I'll get on with my story. I'll head down into the secret base and get ready to tell this bad boy. So, senior year, story begins. The story begins closer to the, let's say, halfway point of the first semester, so end of the first 9 weeks. Senior year, you already know senior year. Senioritis kicks in with everybody, so people get lazy, people don't want to do their work as much, people complain when they get work. I know that I did, and I know a lot of my classmates did, so senioritis is a real thing. And even in our easier classes, sometimes we don't want to do the work. By easier classes, I'm referring to my third period civics class. Now, my teacher, his name was Mr. Hudson. We called him Huddy D, Coach Hudson. And he was a cool guy, but when he gave us work, we really didn't like it. Now, yes, he was a chill guy, and he was honestly one of the easiest classes that me and my classmates had, but, you know, sometimes he gave us these assignments out of class called Everfis. And Everfi was this website you would go to answer questions about civics after watching like a 30-minute video. And there was no way you could skip over the video, so they were really time-consuming, and really just not many people enjoyed doing them, including myself. But being the ambitious and hard worker that I was fine with doing my own Everfis. I'll get back to Everfi later. Now, anybody I mention in this story, I'm not going to use their real name for the sake of privacy, but I will use a name that starts with the first letter of their actual name. Okay? Okay, so I had a really good friend in the senior class. His name was Morbidelli. That's what we'll call him. Now, Morbidelli was a smart guy. He made great grades in his first 3 years at Lamp. Emphasis on first 3 because, as I said, senioritis kicks in. Nonetheless, he's still a smart guy. Goes to Auburn right now. Now, Morbidelli was a pretty lazy student in senior year, so I don't know what class this began with, but he asked me to do his work for him, and he knew that I wasn't going to do any work for him for free. So, every time, whether it was calculus, or civics, or English, or whatever class, he made sure to offer me something in return. He made sure to give me either $20 or some Chick-fil-A, some other food, I don't even know. He would always have an offer for me that I just couldn't refuse, man. I mean, if he asked me to do a math problem for him for $20, I couldn't turn that down, so I'd say this began in calculus with these assignments called quests, and they were little multiple choice, short answer math problems. And each of these assignments was about 20, 25 problems long, some of them 30, but the longer quests were the one that were honestly easier. So he would offer me money to do these for him, and soon, to say the least, he wasn't the only person who offered me money to do any of these assignments. You get where I'm coming from? Word spread, whether it was by me posting something on my story, but Max giving me some absurd amount of money to do one problem, or a weird amount of money to write one paragraph for econ. So, people knew about this. Not only did people know that Max gave me a weirdly high amount of money to do all this work, but this also made them think and say, oh, Caleb does work for money. Man, if I don't feel like doing something, all I gotta do is just hit up Caleb. He's the plug. And if I give him some money, hey, he'll do it. Now, I wouldn't always do it, but with some of my closer friends, I would do it. As I said, I'm not going to use anyone's real name, so here's another instance of me doing someone's work for him. Let's say this guy, his name's Peanut, and Peanut gave me $30 one time to do one of these math quests for him. And $30 is crazy. I can go to Chick-fil-A and get 5 meals with $30. That was huge. And people in my friend group, when I would tell them how much money I would get, their jaws would drop. They would say, man, I could be doing this. Come on, Morbidelli, hit me up. Come on, Peanut. I'll do the work for you. But nah, they were giving me money for this, and I was making some great profit. I mean, doing the work didn't cost any money. But when I got the money back, crazy. So Peanut and Morbidelli were my only customers. I had many more people come to me, but I don't know if any of them are worth mentioning, especially with names that aren't even their own. Now let me get back to Everfi, because as I said earlier, Everfi was very time consuming. Not many people really enjoyed doing it. So Morbidelli hit me up one day and said, "Hey Doc, do these Everfis for me. I'll give you $20 and some Chick-fil-A." And he held up his end of the bargain. But that's not where this thing starts. Now, in the morning sometimes, since I worked as a lab aide in my first period class, I didn't have to sit around in the classroom, so I could just go around, do whatever I wanted. Now I chose to go to the library in the morning. And would I study there? No. Well, not really. Not very often. Sometimes. But one day I went to the library because there were a bunch of computers in there, and Morbidelli needed me to do his Everfi for him. So naturally I go in there, and I want to do Morbidelli's Everfi for him, but the library is closed. I can't go in there. It's locked. And the librarian said they weren't going to get back until like 8:30, and I don't have enough time. I actually have a class at 8:30, so I got to do Morbidelli's work as soon as possible. So I slide in one of my favorite teachers' rooms. I don't want to use her name either, so we'll say her name was Mrs. Gustavo. Now, Mrs. Gustavo really liked me as a student, and there's a reason she picked me as her lab aide. Now, Mrs. Gustavo really trusted me, so I asked her, "Hey, can I get on your computer? And can I do this Everfi, because it's due later?" And she says, "Of course, sweetie." So Mrs. Gustavo lets me get on her computer and work on this Everfi for Morbidelli. So I'm working on these assignments, and it's 3 assignments actually, but I worked on them all at the same time because that was something cool you could do. So I clicked on them all at the same time and got to work on them. And eventually Miss Gustavo looked over my shoulder and said, "Wait a second, you're not working on your Everfi?" And I said, "Oh no, this is for Morbidelli. He didn't have time to do it this weekend, so I'm just doing it for him." She just said, "Okay," and walked off. I didn't think it was a big deal, but later, this is a few hours later, I'm just chilling, walking down the hall. She comes up to me and says, "Caleb, I never want you to do any of that again." And I was confused. I was like, "What?" She said, "I don't want Morbidelli taking advantage of you, giving you money to do things that he should be doing on his own. It wastes your time, Caleb, and I don't want you to do it. Now, if you do this ever again, I'm going to tell Mr. Monson about it. He's the name of my principal." And I go, "Okay, fair enough, fair enough." Now, later in the day, probably 1 or 2 hours later, I get called to the office. I'm like, "Okay, what's up?" I've been called to the office a good bit, but not because I'm in trouble. I'm not nervous. What's up? So I head into the office. I'm called into this room. And in this room, we have Mr. Monson, Mrs. Gustavo, sitting in chairs waiting on me. Mrs. Gustavo walks out of the room, and it's just me and Mr. Monson talking. I'm like, "What's up, Mr. Monson?" He says, "Caleb, I heard you cheated. Tell me the story." I go, "I cheated." And I just tell the story. I'm like, I did this guy's work for him. He paid me, gave me food. And that's what happened. He says, "You know that's against the honor code, right?" I go, "Yeah, I know it is against the honor code, but I was just doing it for him because, you know..." And of course, I didn't want to be like, "Oh, he pays me to do it all the time. I do this all the time." I didn't want to say that, so I'm like, "Oh, he just didn't have time to do it, so I did it for him this one time." He goes, "Oh, okay. Well, you know that's against the honor code, right?" And I go, "Yes." And this is high pressure. He says, "You know that I could expel you for this, right?" He says, "If you've done this more than once, Caleb, I'm expelling you. Because if you're doing a high fraction of someone's work for them, they aren't learning effectively, which means that you're doing the stuff for them that you don't have to be doing in your free time. Basically, if you're doing this more than once, you're out of here. And if you know anybody who is involved with this, anybody else who does work for them, you better tell me or I'm going to go around your class and interrogate people. And I don't want that to happen. There's a chain of people in my class that know that I do a lot of work for Morbidelli. So I only told on one guy, and his name was Jeremy. And the only reason I told on this guy Jeremy is because I didn't want Mr. Monson to go around interrogating everybody about it. Now I think we're in the clear. I think everything's cool, but this guy Jeremy tells Mr. Monson the names of guys that Max hangs out with and associates himself with. So Mr. Monson interrogates all of these guys. I don't want to give them fake names because I think they might know who they are. They'll know who they are anyway, but yeah, so he interrogates all of them, threatens to expel every single one of us. And because this started with Everfi, that's why I'm calling it the Everfi scandal. Now, none of us got expelled and all of us graduated, none of us got in trouble. He interrogated a bunch of us, but it was no big deal in the end. Everything turned out well, I guess. Me and Morbidelli's friendship was ruined for a little while, but we got it back eventually. Some of my teammates call me D'Angelo Russell. And we're cool to this day. He loves my videos. And let me get this kill. This is for Morbidelli! Thank y'all for listening to the story. Thank y'all for watching. Maybe it was a bit dramatic to say I almost got expelled, but I was threatened that I would be expelled. Thank y'all for watching. Love telling these stories and playing this game. I'll be back soon with more videos. You already know. Love y'all. Peace.